How are you today? This is Teacher Camille once again, Grade 9 Mathematics teacher. To help you better understand different topics in mathematics, you can visit my channel. It's Simel's channel on YouTube for more video lessons. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to keep you updated. Thank you! So before we start, let me give you some safety health tips to avoid COVID-19. First, always wash your hands, wear face mask and face shield, and observe social distancing. So for today, we will learn about modeling, representing, and transforming quadratic functions. In this video, you will be able to model real-life situations using quadratic functions, represents a quadratic function using table of values, graph, and equation, and transform the quadratic function defined by y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c into the form y is equal to a quantity x minus h quantity squared plus k. To start, let's first have a short review. So last time, if you can still remember, we discussed about quadratic equation. And when we say quadratic equation, it can be represented as a standard form as ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a must not be equal to 0. Why do you think a must not be equal to 0? Very good. Kasi kapag ang a natin ay 0, 0 times x squared, any number multiplied by 0 is always 0. So therefore, kapag naging 0 ito, mawawala na po tayo ng tinatawag nating quadratic term. So pag wala na tayong quadratic term, we cannot consider this equation as a quadratic equation anymore. Why? Dahil ang matitira po is yung ating linear term na lang at saka si constant. And when we say linear term, yung highest degree of exponent na lang natin is 1 since wala na nga po tayong quadratic term. So therefore, tama talaga yung condition natin na yung a must not be equal to 0 for us to say that the given equation is a quadratic equation. Now, if the given quadratic equation is in the form x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0, we can write this as a quadratic function as y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So, instead of y, we can also use f of x. Nakuha now. What do you think is the difference between quadratic equation and quadratic function? If you can still remember dun sa mga previous lesson natin, when we say quadratic equation, you were asked to solve for the value of x, right? So, ibig sabihin, when we say quadratic equation, it is given to you to solve for the variable, while quadratic function is given naman for us to graph the given equation. So, therefore, ginagamit natin yung function para mag-graph natin yung equation. And sa pagka-graph, ganito po yung makikita nating figure. The graph of a quadratic function is called a parabola. And when we say parabola, it can opens upward or downwards. Now, for us to understand the topic more further, let's have some examples. So these were some situations that models quadratic functions in real life. First, throwing a ball. Second, shooting a cannon. And the third one, launching a rocket. So as you can see, when we do such things like launching a rocket, throwing a ball, it can forms a parabola. Since na-familiarize na kayo regarding sa iba't ibang situations that model sa quadratic function, let's try our first activity. So this activity is called yes or no. So I will show you some pictures and then you will tell me if it models a quadratic function or not. So are you ready? So let's go! Let's start with our first picture. Are you familiar with this game? Yes, this game is called Angry Bird. Now, do you think this game models a quadratic function? Your answer? Yes, it models a quadratic function since this game forms a parabola. Genius!
Oh yeah!
Let's have our next picture. Do you think it models a quadratic function? Your answer? No, it doesn't model a quadratic function. High five! Let's proceed with our last picture. Do you think it models a quadratic function? Your answer? Yes, it models a quadratic function since it forms a parabola. Well done! Did you enjoy the activity? Very good! Since we're done with our first activity, let's have the definition of a quadratic function. So a quadratic function is a second-degree polynomial represented as f of x is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, or y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. A must not be equal to 0. As I've mentioned earlier, a must not be equal to 0 so that yung ating quadratic term ay mananatili dyan. We cannot consider the given as a quadratic function if we don't have a quadratic term. So that is why a must not be equal to 0, where a, b, and c are all real numbers. Let's study the following illustrative examples to know more about quadratic functions. Is f of x is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 8 a quadratic function? Yes, since its highest degree is 2 and all numerical coefficients are real numbers. So as you can see in our given, the highest degree of the exponent is 2 and all the numerical coefficients are real numbers. So I can say that the given function is quadratic since it satisfies the definition. Now, let's proceed with our next example. Is f of x is equal to 9x plus 3 squared a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function since its highest degree is still 1. So, ma'am, bakit po 1? Di ba po meron po ditong squared? Hindi po, since yung 3 squared ay constant at pwede po natin yang i-simplify. So, how? So, as you can see, pag sinimplify natin si 3 squared ay 9. So, therefore, ang magiging function natin, we have f of x is equal to 9x plus 9. So, therefore, the degree of the exponent is still 1. Since yung 3 squared nga natin is constant. So, therefore, the given function is not a quadratic function. Next example tayo. Is f of x is equal to x plus 1 times x minus 2 a quadratic function? Yes, it is a quadratic function because if you will expand it, its highest degree will still be 2. So, paano po ba tayo nag-expand ng isang quadratic function like this one? If you can still remember the FOIL method, ito po ay naituro sa mga previous years nyo. So, when we say FOIL method, the first term, the outer term, the inner term, and we have the last term. So, expand natin ito. So, just copy f of x or yung ating function. F of x is equal to. So, first term, we have x times x. So, x times x, we have x squared. The outer term, so we have x times negative 2. So, we have negative 2x. Inner term, so we have positive 1 times positive x. We have positive x. And the last term, we have positive 1 times negative 2. So, we have negative 2. So, combine like term tayo. Copy f of x is equal to combine like term. So, we have negative 2x plus x. Just copy this one. So, we have x squared. And syempre nga, combine like term. So, negative 2x plus x, we have negative x. And then just copy negative 2. Since wala nang like term, dito po na siya nagtatapos. So, as you can see, kapag na-expand natin itong function na to, nakakita pa rin tayo that the highest degree ay 2 pa rin. So, I can say that the given is an example of a quadratic function. Let's now proceed with our last example. So, is f of x is equal to 10x squared plus 3x cubed minus 1 a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function since its highest degree is 3. So, as you can see in the given example, the highest degree of the exponent is 3. So, therefore, I can say already that the given function is not quadratic. So, from the following examples, the given is an equation or a function. So, now, what if the given is just a graph? So, how can we say that the given graph is a quadratic function or not? So, na-mention ko na earlier na when we say graph of a quadratic function, we're talking about a parabola, yung pinakita kong figure na nag-opens upward or downward. So, ibig sabihin, we can easily say na kapag nakakita kayo ng parabola, that is already a quadratic function. At kung hindi naman, that is not a quadratic function. So, let's have these examples. First example, so do you think it models a quadratic function?
Yes!
Yes, since the given is a parabola. So next, this one, do you think it models a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function. As you can see, ang na-form sa graph is a line. So therefore, it is not a quadratic function. So the third one, do you think that this is a quadratic function? Yes, because it is a parabola that opens upward. And the last one, dahil madali lang naman, last one na tayo. Do you think it models a quadratic function? Of course not. It is not a quadratic function. So, napakadali lang, di ba? Kapag graph yung given, we can easily identify if the given is a quadratic function or not by simply identifying if it is a parabola or not. Since we're talking about the graph of a quadratic function or yung tinatawag nating parabola, let's discuss some properties of it. So, as you can see, I have two hands. Charot. I have here an example of a parabola. So, some of the property of it, we have this one. Siyempre, it is called the vertex. So, yung vertex natin is yung turning point of the parabola, which either the lowest or the highest point of the graph. So, in this case, this is the lowest point of the graph since it opens upward. So, lowest point siya. So, therefore, if it opens downward, it will be the highest point. Get it? Okay, so next tayo. So, this is called the opening of the parabola. This one is yung tinatawag nating intercept. So, actually, hindi lang to. Yung tinatawag nating intercepts is yung kung saan po siya tumama. Doon sa ating x and y axis. So, pag tumama siya dito sa x axis, yun yung tinatawag nating x-intercepts. Pag naman tumama siya dito sa ating y axis, yun naman yung tinatawag nating y-intercepts. And also, we have tinatawag nating axis of symmetry. So, yung axis of symmetry, it divides the parabola into part such that the one half of the graph is the reflection of the other half. So, as you can see, kung ito yung tinatawag nating axis of symmetry, hinati niya yung ating parabola into two equal parts. Yung parang mirror. So, yan po yung mga different properties ng ating parabola. So, we're done with the different properties of a parabola, and also we're done with identifying if the given is a quadratic function given only the graph, right? So, madali lang kapag given yung graph. So, just a short review do sa tinakal natin kanina, pag sinabi nating graph, kapag nakakita tayo ng parabola, I can say na agad or we can say that the given is a quadratic function. So now, what if the given is just a table of values? How can we identify if the given is a quadratic function or not? So I have here two examples of table of values. So paano tayo mag-identify kung sino dyan yung quadratic function or not? Kasi pag graph, madali lang, di ba? Kapag parabola, automatic quadratic function na agad. So, what if table of values tayo? So, simple lang po. So, how? as you can see here, meron tayong x, yung values ng x natin or yung tinatawag nating independent variable. And yung values ni y is yung tinatawag nating dependent variable. So, ba't natin siya tinawag na dependent variable? Kasi po, yung value ni y ay nakadepende sa value ni x, diba? So, mamaya malalaman natin kapag nagbigay na tayo dyan ng examples. So, let's now focus muna doon sa paano tayo mag-identify kung ito ay isang quadratic function. So, madali lang po. So, magsasubtract lang tayo doon sa ating dependent variable pabaliktad. So, how yon? Paano po? So, we have 4 minus 3. Pabaliktad natin magsasubtract. So, we have 4 minus 3 is 1. So, next, we have 3 minus 2. 1 din. So, we have 2 minus 1, also 1. And 1 minus 0 is still 1. So, as you can see, it produces equal differences. So, tama. Equal differences yung na-produce nung ating first example. So, dito tayo sa ating pangalawang example. Let's try. So, we have 3 minus 0. So, we have 3. 0 minus 1. So, para hindi malito, sige, ilagay natin dito. We have 0 minus negative 1. So, yung tinuro ko sa student ko before, pag nakakita ng magkatabing negative, nagiging positive. So, kung saan ko po kayo mas nadadalian na process, go. So, ganito po kasi yung tinuro ko sa aking students before. So, pag magkatabi si negative, just positive lang. And then, copy 0 and then si 1. So, we have 0 plus 1 ay 1 na po ito. Nakuha. And then, negative 1 minus 0, negative 1. 0 minus 3, we have negative 3. So, as you can see, unlike this one, hindi pa siya nag-produce ng equal differences. So, try pa natin one more time. So, we have 3 minus 1, we have positive 2. So, next tayo, we have 1 minus negative 1. So, dito natin ilagay para hindi nakakalito. So, we have 1 minus negative 1. So, again, sabi ko, kapag magkatabi yung negative, nagiging positive na. Then, copy lang si 1 at saka si 1. So, we have 1 plus 1 is positive 2. So, the last one, so we have negative 1 minus negative 3. So, negative 1 minus negative 3. So, again, pag magkatabi si negative, positive. And then, just copy 3 and copy negative 1. So, negative 1 plus 1. So, tinuro ko sa student ko before dito po, na yung kantang row your boat. So, kapag different sign subtract, get the sign of the higher number. Since the given is different sign, isang negative, isang positive, you subtract. So, 3 minus 1 is 2 and then get the sign of the higher number. So, this will be positive 2. So, as you can see, nag-produce na rin po siya ng equal differences. Pero, yung equal differences niya ay lumabas doon sa ating pangalawang attempt. So, therefore, paano natin malalaman kung quadratic function siya or not? Quadratic function po siya if it produces equal differences doon sa ating pangalawang attempt. So, therefore, I can say that the second table of values is an example of a quadratic function. So, again, guys, paano natin masasabi na quadratic function siya? Kapag siya po ay nag-produce ng equal differences doon sa ating pangalawang layer. So, pag naman sa nag-appear na ng equal differences doon pa lang sa first attempt, ito po yung tinatawag nating linear function. So, again, linear function kapag nag-produce na agad ng equal differences doon sa ating first attempt. Quadratic function naman kapag sa pangalawang attempt natin siya nag-produce ng equal differences. Nakuha? So, ma'am, paano po kapag hindi po siya nag-equal difference sa first and saka sa second? So, therefore, the given is neither a linear function nor a quadratic function. So, sana malinaw. So, kung malinaw, let's now proceed with this function. So, sabi dito, y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So, given this function, let's complete this table of values. So, as you can see, blanco po yung ating variable y or yung tinatawag nating function. So, y. Sabi ko nga kanina, yung value ni y is yung tinatawag nating dependent variable. So, yung value niya kasi ay nakadepende sa kung ano yung mga values ng ating x. So, paano natin ito masusuplayan? Siyempre, by using this function. So, isa-substitute natin one by one yung mga value ni x to get the value of y. So, para mas maintindihan, let's start with our first column. So, dito tayo sa kapag daw ang x is negative 1. So, substitute natin. So, syempre, using the function y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So, ito daw yung function natin. So, substitute natin the value of x doon sa ating function. So, we have y is equal to, first value of x na gagamitin natin is si negative 1. So, we have negative 1 squared minus 2. Substitute, negative 1 minus 3. So, wala pa tayong sinusolve. We just substitute the value of x, which is yung ating negative 1. So, solve. So, we have y is equal to negative 1 squared is positive 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. And then just copy negative 3. Next, so we have y is equal to combine like term, or simplify dahil like term na sila lahat. So we have 1 plus 2 is 3. And then just copy minus 3. So, ito lang muna yung inuna ko para hindi malito. So, y now is equal to 3 minus 3, and that is 0. So, now, the value of y or yung ating function is 0 if the value of x is negative 1. So, kaya po siya tinawag na dependent variable. Nakuha? So, we're done with our first one. Doon tayo sa ating second column. What if naman daw kung ang value ng x ay 0. So, dito tayo. So, ito pa rin yung gagamitin nating function. So, substitute lang natin. So, we have y is equal to, ang x daw natin this time ay 0. So, 0 squared minus 2, 0 minus 3. So, we have y is equal to 0 squared is 0. Negative 2 times 0 is still 0. And then, minus 3, just copy. So, 0, cancel na ito. So, our y is negative 3. So, therefore, value ng y natin or yung function natin is negative 3 if yung x natin is 0. So, malinaw. Next, ito na tayo sa ating pangatlo. So, what if the value naman daw ng ating x is positive 1? So, ganun din. Substitute the value. So, y is equal to, syempre, using this function pa din, ang x ay ipapalit natin, this time is 1. So, squared minus 2, 1 minus 3. So, y is equal to 1 squared is 1. Negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2 minus 3. So, y is equal to 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And then just copy minus 3. So, our y is equal to negative 1 minus 3, same sign, add and keep. So, we add, so 4, and then we keep the sign negative. So, ibig sabihin, the value of our y, or ang function natin is negative 4, if ang x naman natin is positive 1. So, next na tayo. What if the value of x naman is 2? So, using the same function, so we have y is equal to 2 squared minus 2, 2 minus 3. So, substitute lang natin. Lahat ng x ay papalitan ng 2. So, we have y is equal to 2 squared is equal to 4. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. And we have negative 3. So, 4 minus 4 is 0. So, therefore, our value of y is negative 3. So, therefore, the value of y or yung ating function is negative 3 if ang x natin is 2. So, let's now proceed with the last one. What if the value of x naman daw is 3? So, y is equal to, substitute lang, lahat ng x ay 3, squared minus 2, 3 minus 3. So, therefore, y is equal to 3 squared is equal to 9. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6 minus 3. So, y is equal to 9 minus 3 is 3 minus 3. So, our value of y now is equal to 0. So, therefore, the value of our function y is 0 if x is 3. So, nakuha? So, madali lang, di ba? So, now, since may mga value na tayo, nakuha na natin yung mga value ng ating y, we can now graph. So, paano po ba tayo nag-graph? So, marunong na kayo nito, di ba? Ito po ay na-discuss na nung sa inyong mga previous years. So, let's graph one by one. So, ang x daw is -1. So, ang x, alam natin na ang movement is left and right lang. Kapag y naman, up and down. So, kapag daw ang x is -1, so ito si -1, ang y daw ay 0. So, wala na tayong movement ng up and down. So, ito na po yung ating first point. So, x is -1, y is 0. Second point, if x daw is 0, our y daw is -3. So, ito po yun. Next one. So, I believe marunong na kayo mag-plot, ha? Next one, kapag daw ang x is +1, our y is -4. So, this one. Next, kapag ang x is 2, y is -3. So, this one. And the last one, kapag daw ang x ay 3, ang y daw ay 0. So, this will be our last point. Now, if you connect the points, pasensya na kung hindi masyadong perfect. So, as you can see, if you connect the points, ano ang mapo-form natin? Makaka-form po tayo ng isang parabola. So, therefore, yung function natin na y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3 is a quadratic function since nakikita natin na naka-form nga po siya ng isang parabola. So, medyo mahaba pero madali lang. So, there! Since we're done representing a quadratic function using table of values, graph, and equation, we can now proceed with our next activity. So, this activity is called quadratic function or not. So, I will show you some pictures and functions, and then you will tell me if it is a quadratic function or not. So, are you ready? Let's start. This one, is this a quadratic function? Yes, it is a quadratic function. Why? Because as you can see, the highest degree of the exponent is 2 and all the numerical coefficients are real numbers. So therefore, this one is an example of a quadratic function. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function because the highest degree of the exponent is just 1. So therefore, this one is not a quadratic function. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? Yes, it is a quadratic function. Why? Because the picture is a parabola. So therefore, the given is a quadratic function. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function because as you can see, the given figure is a line. So therefore, this is not a quadratic function. How about this one? Is this a quadratic function? No, it is not a quadratic function since yung equal differences natin is produces dun sa ating first attempt. So therefore, this is not a quadratic functions. So there, did you enjoy the activity? Well done! Since you already know how to identify if the given function is quadratic, let's now proceed with transforming it into a vertex form. Quadratic function defined by y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c can be transformed into the form y is equal to a x minus h squared plus k called the vertex form by using the completing the square method. How? By following these steps. First, group together the terms containing x. Second, factor out a. If a is equal to 1, proceed to step 3. Complete the expression in parentheses to make it a perfect square trinomial by adding the value of -b over 2 squared and subtracting the value of a, -b over 2 squared to the constant term. And the last one, simplify and express a perfect square trinomial as the square of a binomial. For you to understand it, let's have this example. By following the first step, we need to group together the terms containing x. So, i-group natin these terms. So, we have y is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So, again, by following the first step, we need to group these terms, yung terms containing x. And then, next step tayo. So, sabi sa next step, we need to factor out a. But, if a daw is 1, we will proceed now with step 3. Since in our given, a is 1, the numerical coefficient of our quadratic term, that is a, right? So, since it is 1, we will proceed with step 3. So, sa step 3, sabi doon, make the expression in the parentheses a perfect square trinomial. So, gagawin daw natin tong perfect square trinomial. How? By adding the value of, yung sinabi kanina, yung value daw ng negative b over 2 squared. By adding this value dito and subtracting it naman doon po sa term sa nasa labas. So, now, saan natin kukunin again yung value nito? By solving this one. So, saan natin kukunin yung value ng b? If you can still remember, this function is in standard form. So, yung a natin is the numerical coefficient of the quadratic term. Yung b natin is the numerical coefficient of the linear term. And c naman natin is the constant. So, therefore, ang b natin is negative 2. So, substitute lang natin si negative 2 dito kay b. So, therefore, negative, our b is negative 2. And then, over 2 squared. So, solve. Negative times negative 2 is positive 2 over 2 and then squared. So, 2 over 2 is just 1 and then squared. And 1 squared is just 1. So, therefore, ang isusupply nating value dito is positive 1. Sabi dun sa step 3, by adding it here and subtracting naman dun sa term na nasa labas. Nakuha? What is the next step? So, next step natin, express the perfect square trinomial into a square of a binomial. So, since perfect square trinomial na to, i-express natin siya as a square of a binomial. So, how? Yun po ay napag-aralan na sa mga previous years nyo. Gagawin natin yung perfect square binomial. So, paano tayo naggagawa ng perfect square binomial? Ini-square lang natin yung first term. So, ano yung square root nito? Ini-square root natin yung first term. Square root of x squared is x, diba? So, hindi ko na di-discuss yun dahil napag-aralan nyo na yun sa mga previous years nyo. So, again, paano natin ginagawang perfect square of a binomial? Just get the square root of the first term. So, square root of x squared is x. And get the square root of the last term. So, square root of 1 is 1. So, what will be the sign? It depends dun sa sign ng ating middle term. Since yung middle term natin is negative, yun po yung magiging sign ng ating square of a binomial. Nakuha? And then, we just simplify yung ating term sa labas. So, negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. So, as you can see, this one is in the vertex form na, diba? As you can still remember, do sa vertex form natin, we have y is equal to a quantity x minus h squared plus k. So, ma'am, nasan po yung ating a? So, again, guys, ang a natin is 1, diba? Yun yung nandito sa labas. So, since 1 naman siya, pwede na po natin siyang hindi ilagay. Kasi alam naman natin, ng 1 times any number is just the number itself. So, pwede na natin hindi ilagay si 1. Then, eto si x. And then, si h natin is yung 1 and then squared. And then, yung ating k, si negative 4. Nakuha? So, ma'am, bakit po ba tayo nagtatransform ng quadratic function into a vertex form? So, yan po ay pag-aaralan or itatakel doon sa ating mga next videos. Pero para may background lang kayo, kaya siya tinawag na vertex form kasi po ito ay may kinalaman sa vertex ng ating parabola. Diba? As you can still remember, pag sinabi nating vertex ng parabola, yun po yung turning point. So, it's either the highest point or the lowest point if the given parabola naman opens upward. So, it is the lowest point. Nakuha? So again, na-transform na natin this given function into a vertex form. So eto na po siya. So we're done with our first example. So let's now proceed with our next example. So we have y is equal to x squared plus 4x minus 1. So let's transform this one into a vertex form. So by following the first step again, we have y is equal to x squared plus 4x. And then just copy negative 1, diba? Yung first step natin, we need to group the terms containing x, right? And the next step, since yung a naman natin is also 1, so magpo-proceed na tayo sa ating third step, which is gagawin naman natin ito na isang perfect square trinomial. How? Syempre, by adding ulit the value of negative b over 2 squared and adding it here and then subtracting it naman dito po sa ating term sa labas. So again, yung ating b is yung ating numerical coefficient ng linear term. So we have positive 4. So substitute natin. So we have 4 over 2 squared. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 and then squared. So negative 2 squared is positive 4. So our value na i-add natin dito is 4 at ang isasubtract naman natin dito ay 4. So next step na tayo and it is the last step. Ano yung last step nga ulit natin? Express the perfect square trinomial into a square of a binomial. So eto daw. So square of a binomial. So paano ulit yon? Kunin natin ang square root ng ating first term. So square root nito. So square root of x squared is x. At square root naman ng last term. So square root of 4 is 2. And what will be the sign? Kung ano po yung sign ng ating middle term. So that is positive. Nakuha. And then syempre simplify this one. So negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. So there. Na-transform na natin the given quadratic function into a vertex form. So, eto na po siya, right? So, vertex form na po yan kasi it follows na y is equal to a quantity x minus h squared plus yung ating k. So, ayan na po yun. Again, yung a natin is just 1, so no need to write. And then we have the x, we have the h, and then we have the value of our k. So, there, we're done again with example number 2. So, ibig sabihin, magpo-proceed na po tayo sa ating last example sa transforming quadratic function into a vertex form. Last example. So, we have y is equal to x squared plus 2x minus 4. So, 4. So, again, first step, group together the terms containing x. So, we have x squared plus 2x and then copy minus 4. Since our given a is just 1, we will now proceed again with step number 3. And that is, gagawin natin tong perfect square trinomial. How? By adding the value of negative b over 2 squared dito and subtracting naman dito. Nakuha? So, what is the value of our b in the given function? That is positive 2. So, substitute. B is positive 2 over 2 squared. So, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1 squared. And that is positive 1. So, therefore, i-add natin dito is positive 1 at isasubtract natin dito is also positive 1. So, we're done with step 3. Proceed na tayo sa ating last step. So, gagawin naman natin itong square of a binomial. So, basic na sa inyo yung square of a binomial. So, again, paano natin siya ginagawa? Square root lang yung first term. So, square root of x squared is x. And square root of 1 is 1. At kung ano yung sign ng ating middle term, yun po yung magiging sign natin dito. And then, just simplify yung term sa labas. So, negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. So, we're done. Na-transform na natin yung ating last example into a vertex form. Since we're done with our 3 examples, it's now time to check if you really understand how to transform the quadratic function into a vertex form. So let's check it using this activity. So this activity is called let's transform. So I will give you a quadratic function and then you will transform it into a vertex form. Let's go! Given this one, y is equal to x squared minus 6x minus 3. You need to transform it into a vertex form or yung tinatawag nating y is equal to a x minus h squared plus k. So I will give you 15 seconds to answer and your timer starts now. Time's up. Let's now check your answers. So first step, we need to group the terms containing x. Next step, we need to add and subtract the value of negative b over 2 squared, and that value is 9. And for the last step, make it a square of a binomial. So did you get it correctly? Well done! Since we're done modeling real-life situations using quadratic functions, representing a quadratic function using table of values, graph, and equation, and transforming quadratic functions into a vertex form, it's now time to check your learnings. Let's have this assessment. For your assessment, choose the letter of the correct answer and write it on a sheet of paper. I will give you 10 seconds for each question. Let's go! For number 1, which of the following does not model a quadratic function? A. Jumping from one place to another. B. Throwing a stone upward. C. Walking on the road. Or letter D. Shooting a ball. Your timer starts now. For number 2, which of the following graph models a quadratic function? Is it A, B, C, or D? Your timer starts now. Time's up. Number 3, which of the following is a quadratic function? Is it A, x squared minus 2x plus 10 cubed? B, x cubed minus 7x squared plus x? C, 0x squared minus 5x plus 4? Or D, 9x plus 4? Your timer starts now. Time's up. Number 4. Which of the following table of values represents a quadratic function? Is it A, B, C, or D? Your timer starts now. Time's up. For number 5, transform y is equal to x squared minus ax plus 3 in vertex form. Is it A, B, C, or D? Your timer starts now. Time's up. Let's now check your answers. For number 1, C. For number 2, C. For number 3, A. For number 4, B. And for number 5, B. Did you get it all correct?
Oh, yeah!
Well done! Let's now summarize our learnings for today. So, quadratic function, it is a second-degree polynomial represented as f of x is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, or y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. A must not be equal to 0, where a, b, and c are real numbers. The graph of a quadratic function is a parabola, and it can open upward or downward. The last one, quadratic function can be transformed into the form y is equal to a x minus h squared plus k, also known as the vertex form, by using the completing method. So that is all for this video. I hope you learned something new. Again, this is Teacher Camille saying goodbye!